Yeah, this is all really good advice, and we need to prepare for a major hurricane landfall coming into the west coast of Florida on Thursday, and of course the worst of the weather even arriving a little before then. But let me give you the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center, 155 Cat 4. This is soon going to be upgraded, I think, to a Cat 5, because right now the hurricane hunters are in there and they're finding some incredible data with the pressure actually right now somewhere around 924 millibars, right? So you can kind of cross that off your list and continue this pressure tank, which means the winds come up, and we're seeing flight level winds come in at over 150 knots, which is about 180 miles per hour. So this is very likely a Category 5 right now as we're speaking. It is no surprise that we're seeing this rapid intensification continue. There's a lot of data out there that suggests we may not be quite done yet. One of the reasons that this is so intense is you can see the incredible clearing of the eye, this pinhole of an eye, a tiny little eye, all of a sudden nearly cloud-free. There's a lot of sinking air right in the middle of this that is warming it right in the middle of it and lowering the pressure, because warm air is less dense than colder air, and the pressure underneath that eye is continuing to come down because the air is sinking on it, believe it or not. And with that lowering of the pressure, the winds crank up in response. There are a lot of atmospheric reasons and oceanic reasons I'll get to coming up at the top of the hour. But one of the reasons why I think we're not maybe done strengthening is look at the lightning encircling the eye almost symmetrically, right? That is telling us vigorous convection has now encapsulated and encircled completely the center of lowest pressure, and we're going to continue to force that air downward and warm the interior even more, lowering the pressure and strengthening the wind. This Hurricane Hunter Pass, about ready, I've just showed you. This is not the most updated. As I mentioned, it's not 933 anymore. It's somewhere in the mid 920s. This number is not 146 anymore. It's well into the 150s or above that. This is a remarkable deepening rate, the kind that I can't remember seeing in my adulthood. So this is something very, very significant. And thankfully for now, we're not seeing the strengthening of the winds along the northern Yucatan, but that's because the hurricane hasn't gotten there. Thankfully, right now, the most intense part of the hurricane is very tightly concentrated around the center, and we can only hope that tonight and tomorrow morning it bypasses the Yucatan. But unfortunately, the worst part of this hurricane is coming to Florida. This is one model solution. There are a lot of other ones that we need to pay attention to. There is room for the hurricane to go even north of Tampa, the center of it, and that matters so much, because remember, the worst wind and the worst surge comes along and to the right, in this case the south of where the center goes, and this could be a very dire situation for Tampa. Again, there's room and uncertainty, a lot of it left in this forecast, but do note that the landfall of a major hurricane is in all likelihood coming for Florida and Tampa. We just don't know yet, and areas nearby where the center is going to go, because that matters who gets the absolute worst of all of it. Guys, back to you.
And the angle of approach, too, is very harsh, and that will only ramp up the surge concerns. Let's talk about the freshwater flooding potential, because we're not walking in to this event with a lot of dry ground.
No, I mean, talk about it. I mean, it's been very wet out there for the year. Look at some of these totals here and the surplus this year. We're talking in places like Tampa, Fort Myers, surplus is up over 20 inches. The one spot that stands out, Orlando, where we're down a bit, so we could use some rain, but when you start talking tropical cyclones, yeah, you don't want this much.
Absolutely not this much. I mean, it's going to cause problems no matter where you are, even if you're in a deficit, but especially if you're in one of those big surpluses. We have rain today. We've had rain throughout the weekend. This is not associated with Hurricane Milton. This is just general atmospheric moisture that's been hanging out over the Sunshine State, causing problems with preparations, causing problems with clearing the debris from Hurricane Helene, and it's also laying the groundwork for a flooding situation.
Yeah, flood watch is up across most of the peninsula. Some of the rainfall totals, the European has one solution, the American GFS has another solution, but some heavy rain coming in along the path of this hurricane. Breaking now, when it comes to Hurricane Milton, we now have a Category 5 hurricane. Latest update from the National Hurricane Center. The hurricane hunters, they've been flying through this and sampling what's been going on, and they just continue to find this thing strengthening, bottoming out here. Now we can see what's going on. 160-mile-per-hour winds Category 5 hurricane. And I mean, look at this thing. Look at that eye, as clear as day now. You can clearly see the eye that is fully formed and just the incredible convection surrounding that as well. We have watched this thing really just blossom here just in the last several hours. The 5 o'clock advisory, it was a 100-mile-per-hour hurricane. Central pressure was down around 972. 8 o'clock advisory, so just 3 hours later, it had jumped up 150-mile-per-hour winds, central pressure down to 940, and now look at where it is. 160 with the winds, pressure down to 925. This is one of the fastest, rapidly intensifying hurricanes on record, for sure. This is a monster of a storm. Unfortunately, right now, not impacting land, thank goodness, but it is forecast to kind of skirt right along and just north of the Yucatan. That's in the forecast here, so we'll be watching that very closely as it moves in that direction. And then, as it tracks its way across the eastern parts of the Gulf of Mexico, you do start to notice, again, a big turn to the north and the east, but you also see, in the forecast, at least the official forecast, calling for those wind speeds to come down. Again, that's just the forecast. Doesn't mean that's going to be God's truth and exactly what happens, but the general theme is to see those wind speeds coming down. But I don't want that to let your guard down and think, oh, okay, we're out of the woods. Not by any stretch. We still, as it tries to work its way on in here Wednesday evening, still talking about a major hurricane coming on into the west coast of Florida. So in either way, how you slice it here, even if it is less strong than where it is